Hello, my name is Daniel Clark. I am an international business associate from EM Wasilek, and today I'll be presenting on the Big Middle. So the Big Middle is this area shaded in blue here. It represents different states from the American Midwest, some states from the West and some states from the Southern region that make up this entire middle section of the United States. Overall, this part of the country is often understated. However, it has huge opportunity and has shown notable growth in recent years. This is the area of the country that Ian Wasilek primarily operates in, and we work with clients typically from this area. And in this presentation, we want to highlight for um, businesses that are outside the US the opportunities that exist within this region and show that there is potential for them to grow their business here as well. Just to give an idea of how large this region is, as you can see from east to west, it's about 2,600 kilometers. That's about the same distance as going from Amsterdam over to Moscow. And looking at from a north to south perspective, that's 1,700 kilometers. That's about the same distance as going from Madrid all the way up to Amsterdam. So again, quite a large region we're talking about here. So getting in some demographics to learn more about what this region is made up of. The overall population of the US is about 328 million. The Big Middle is a little less than 1/3 of that. The per income salary as well is less in the Big Middle, but we'll talk about purchasing power and why that actually, people in the Big Middle, their dollar goes further than people who are living on the East and West Coast. Next, going into real GDP, the Big Middle makes up about 1/4 of the overall US real GDP. And overall, the Big Middle is a slightly more educated region with slightly higher percentages of high school graduation and university participation. On this slide, we have two lists. We have the top overall industries list. This is the percent employment for each industry within the Big Middle. So a lot of these are sectors and industries that are quite prominent throughout the entire US, whereas the top relative industries list shows areas of specialization for the Big Middle. So as you can see, manufacturing is a huge focus. If we're looking at the top relative industry list, um, compared to other regions within the US, manufacturing definitely stands out. Agriculture as well is a huge area of income. Management, this one might be a bit more surprising, but there are certain population centers where the management of services and management of companies are a high priority. Finance and insurance is also one that folks might find surprising to be on this list in terms of the top relative industry. But just for an example, there are various financial institutions and insurance institutions throughout the Big Middle that are quite prominent. Some of those examples are US Bank, which is actually located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, BMO Harris Bank, which is out of Chicago, Illinois, and a kind of more recent player in finance is Ally Bank, which is out of Michigan. So all different banks and institutions that are nationwide and quite well known that are born out of the Big Middle. Next, moving on to healthcare, there are many large hospitals that are associated with research institutions and universities that are located throughout this region. Additionally, you may be familiar with the Mayo Clinic, which is out of Rochester, Minnesota, located in the northern part of the US. And finally, there are many wholesalers. So that's another top relative industry of ours. There is an advantage, of course, of being equidistant to the East Coast, the West Coast, and the South, especially for wholesalers. And we'll talk more about the price of rent and the price of land and why for certain wholesalers, that's a big advantage as well. Okay, so next I want to highlight some of the growing sectors in the Big Middle. We're going to look at advanced manufacturing, biotech, and the tech industries, and how both there are companies that have grown with these technologies and these sectors already, and how there is foreseen growth for the next 5 years. So starting with advanced manufacturing, already given the large importance and the history of manufacturing in the Big Middle, analysts are suggesting that this region will be a key player in the growth of US advanced manufacturing moving forward. Advanced manufacturing already accounts for about 10% of economic output within the Big Middle. And as Industry 4.0 continues to grow and continues to be a forefront, of the Biden administration and the economy moving forward within the US. Many people are speculating that given this infrastructure that it already exists here in the Midwest will play a big, key, important role in manufacturing success for the US as it transitions to advanced manufacturing. This is a neat article that came from The Economist, and they did an expose on the American Midwest. So, a large part of what the big middle map is made of. And it made a comparison to Mittelstands, which are these small to medium sized German companies. And in Germany, there exists a large partnership between these large companies and Mittelstanden. And this is a key to their success as they transition into Industry 4.0, which has been an initiative of theirs for the past 5 years. So the Economist article here is making the point that likewise with these partnerships that occurred in Germany, the Midwest will play a key role in partnering with larger corporations to do the manufacturing work that is required for a lot of these larger companies. As you can see here in the graph, it shows different states and their manufacturing as a percent of gross state product. And if you look at this entire graph, this includes the top, I believe, top 10 states. And every single one of these 10 states is located within the big middle. So essentially, for anyone who's looking to invest in advanced manufacturing in the US, we always say that this is the region to do it in. And part of it is due to the history and the experience in this area. And the second part is due to the foreseeing growth in this area moving forward. Okay, so moving on to biotech. Overall, biotech is another industry that is shown growth, and there have been many different biotech companies and medical device companies that have grown within the big middle. These are just a few notable examples. So Pfizer actually is, of course, the US headquarters is in New York, but they have one of their largest manufacturing facilities in Michigan, which is right here next to us in near us in Madison, one state over. Next is Boston Scientific. They are a medical device company, and they are located in Minneapolis, along with Medtronic, another medical device company in Minneapolis. Promega is an enzyme manufacturer based right here in Madison, Wisconsin. And AbbVie is a biopharmaceutical company that is based out of Chicago, Illinois. These are just some examples of notable companies that have already grown and have already achieved success in this industry. So when looking at biotech investments in the big middle, we have seen a promising increase in the amount invested in this region. Most notably in the last 5 years, we've seen a greater than 40% increase. And that increase looks to be sustainable as investments continue to increase and remain at those high levels after the initial jump that happened in 2017 and 2018. Overall, the states of Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio have emerged as leaders in the big middle biotech cluster. And we have seen Chicago, Cleveland, and Minneapolis specifically being the cities that have the largest biotech investments. When looking at investments by sector, if we're looking at this pie chart above, this shows the diversity in investments within the sector. And I think it speaks a lot to the sustainability of the sector as you see how evenly spread out these investments are by subsector within the biotech industries. So biotech, pharmaceutical, healthcare, IT, and medical device all receiving a very fair share of this investment. All right, so next looking at the tech industry, I'm not going to sit here and say that the big middle is the next Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley still remains the undisputed US capital of tech, and it's the tech hub of the US. However, there are other areas of the US that are growing and are producing more and more tech talent. And there are some interesting trends as well in tech worker migration, which I'll get into in a little bit. So here I just want to highlight some of the larger companies that have grown and been successful in the tech industries in the last 10 to 20 years. The first is Epic. This is a $3 billion healthcare software company. They're located right here outside of Madison, Wisconsin. Next is Morningstar. If any of you are investors, you of course know this company, and they provide high quality financial research. Finally, or next, we have Grubhub, and this is a company based out of Chicago, Illinois, as well. And they provide meal delivery services. So they're competing with Uber Eats, for example, and they're doing quite well in a very competitive space. Accenture, again, not really a tech company, but they do consulting for different types of technology. So a tech consulting firm, and their US headquarters is based in Chicago. They used to be based in Chicago. However, now their international headquarters is in Dublin. And finally, Liquid Web. This is an emerging company out of Michigan that has cloud computing solutions that, again, a very competitive space, and they're doing quite well in it. All right, so referring back to what I had said earlier about tech worker migration, this is an article from Medium that looked into the LinkedIn data about where tech workers are moving. And it's suggesting that really Austin, Texas, and Florida weren't increasing in terms of tech talent as much as we had originally thought. And it shows that Midwestern cities are obtaining more tech workers and retaining their talent better than other parts of the US. So more specifically, and quite interesting for us here at EMW, and we're based out of Madison, is that actually Madison, Wisconsin was the largest tech migration, or the city where the largest tech migration increase took place. So that was quite interesting. Additionally, other areas that found large tech migrations included Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Cleveland, Ohio, which are both cities that are right here in the Big Middle. So now moving on to some of the advantages of the Big Middle. As you can see here, we put California and New York in the Big Middle, an average of the states in the Big Middle, and looked at some of their uh, cost of living metrics. And it looks at hourly wage, salary, transportation costs, and median rent. And you can see here that when we're looking at the Big Middle, uh, the cost of everything is much lower. And although this is to be expected, right, that states in the middle of the US where there are less populous centers would have lower costs of living. But I think this really puts it into perspective and shows the differences specifically in engineering salary. It costs less to hire an engineer, but that engineer is paying a substantially less amount on rent. So we see both employers and employees being incentivized to start doing business in these states in the Big Middle. So, in summary, the Big Middle is often overlooked and understated. There are huge cost savings and advantages amongst the talent heavy pool of workers. And overall, there's a tradition of world class manufacturing in this area that many companies are starting to take advantage of and are starting to emerge with new solutions that are coupled with sectors that will be growing in the near future. On that same point, the Big Middle does have predicted growth and growth in industries that are predicted to um, align with the Biden administration and grow in relevance with the initiatives of the Biden administration. Additionally, the interest in the region is growing, both from the perspective of an employee and an employer. Again, this goes back to the purchasing power and the cost of living in this area, and it's being seen as a more and more appealing place for workers and employers to move. So that concludes my talk on the Big Middle. Thank you all for your attention during this time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our team. Again, my name is Daniel Clark, and you can reach out to me or Ken Wazalik at the emails listed below or the phone numbers listed below. Thank you very much.